Alright, now let's talk about another Netflix movie called Holidate, which is obviously out for seasonal purposes despite the fact that it tries to cover nearly every holiday, for some inexplicable reason. But what was interesting about this, especially for a movie that's actually so incredibly, ridiculously, excruciatingly cliche, is that it's not apparently what I thought it was. Like, I was kind of almost shocked by the first 30 seconds of this, because when I saw that Emma Roberts and Luke Bracey were in it, it was a Netflix movie, and it was called Holidate. I was pretty much expecting something light in the sense of a Hallmark movie, like literally a Hallmark movie, just under the Netflix name. So I was kind of baffled in the first 30 seconds when Emma Roberts says fucking holidays before going into the house. And I didn't, because I didn't realize this was going down like the R-rated path, and not only that, but doing it instantly. Like, this is the very first scene, and mere minutes later, there's like a whole blowjob scene and talking about him coming in her mouth and stuff like that, and it's like, all right, that immediately sort of piques your interest, especially when you think you're getting one thing and it's completely on the other side of that. Um, but that was extremely short-lived, because this is one of those movies where once it establishes that that's what it is, it's gonna run out of gas really, really fast, because they pretty much have nothing else going for them. So, like, this is the kind of movie where Frances Fisher, of all people, is her mom, who's like invaluable as an actress, and she's like immediately saddled with old person that doesn't know how to video chat jokes. So it's like pretty much once you realize the kind of movie you're watching, then you realize, oh yeah, this still has the potential to be predictable around every single corner. By every single corner, I mean every single individual scene. Can be found in some other movie, or it's trying to do something else, because this is really the worst kind of thing. Like, I would take I don't even watch those Hallmark movies, but I would take one of those Hallmark movies over what the kind of movie that this is, because it's the kind of movie we've seen before, where it tries to be different from something and go against something, only with full intention to turn into that thing. So, a huge, enormous red flag in any romantic comedy ever is a romantic comedy that bashes other romantic comedies for their cliches, because it never ever fails. Every single time they build up those cliches just to immediately fall into them. And you might say that that's the point, that that's the joke, but this movie tries so hard to actually be as sincere as a Hallmark movie, despite the places it tries to go and the approach it tries to take to its humor, and its content, and it just turns itself into an embarrassing, like, it turns itself into worse versions of what it's making fun of to begin with. And it's like, do you want to be the thing that makes fun of it, or do you want to be the thing? If you want to... The perfect response to that can only be a quote from a movie that actually did the whole take the holiday movie but be real cynical about it thing, and made it really work. And that would be the scene in Bad Santa when they're playing checkers, and Willie says, "Kid, pick a move and stick with it, will you?" That's what this movie really needs to do. Are you this thing, or are you that thing? Because you look fucking ridiculous trying to be both. You're literally criticizing yourself. You're criticizing the second half of the movie and the first half of it. And like I said, it's so weirdly sincere, especially at the end. It's that there's no way that's some joke that the movie's making. It's literally just another fucking cliche movie that just happens to have a lot of sexual content and fucks in the dialogue. So that's... I'm really, really sick of this shit. Like, it's the thing where, like Vampire Academy. When Vampire Academy kept making fun of Twilight, and it's like, I almost think Vampire Academy might be even worse than Twilight itself. Especially for just the sheer hypocrisy of being the thing it so badly wants to detest. And that's... I don't understand how this stuff keeps happening either. Like, how the makers of this don't realize that's what's happening. And it's, I don't know, but this kind of thing works for people, apparently, for a certain demographic or a group of people, which I am clearly not in. So obviously that has a lot to do with that. But on the side of that, you're going to get a lot of side characters that are mostly here for cringe material to embarrass themselves entirely, like Kristen Chenoweth, who plays one of those characters that has, she kind of sets up the whole concept of the having a different, dude for each holiday or whatever. But naturally, of course, our two main characters, Emma Roberts and Luke Bracey, after having their little meeting up moment, and seeming like they despise each other, of course, get the idea to completely not go down that road. Because they set up the whole thing of it's just a throwaway thing. Like I said, with Kristen Chenoweth, we see her with like a different guy every single time, and that seems to be what the point is. But here she's like, oh no, it's gonna be us every time, so we don't have to worry about being in a relationship or being interrogated about whether or not we're in a relationship. So, of course, naturally, we already know what path that's going to go down. But the other thing that doesn't really work here is that it's to keep you from getting interrogated about your relationship status. Yet, everybody is in on what it is they're doing. Like, everybody seems to know what their relationship to each other is. So, I don't know how that would stop that whole thing. So, the whole thing just doesn't even make sense. So, there is that. And it's going to be one of those things that thinks it's real super knowledgeable about all this stuff. Like, not only is it condescending to the more sincere romance movies that are at least not trying to be something else, but something that they're not, but it's one of those ones where like we get dialogue where they're like playing with fireworks on the 4th of July. Oh, this, yeah, they go through every holiday. You don't like even holidays that you don't need dates for. Like holidays you would just spend with friends or something. They still do this shit because that's what the plot wants. Because they won't fall for each other if it doesn't happen that way. If we don't completely go against the entire setup we brought into this, but whatever. But it's one of those cases where they talk, like Kristen Chenoweth goes into this whole thing where she's supposed to be super knowledgeable about dudes, so she talks about how, she makes this whole firework analogy about how they constantly think about their orgasms or something, and it comes off, it's one of those things that's in all these kind of movies. It's in like How to Be Single type movies, where all the characters seem like they're being really insightful and talking about, the other gender or other relationships or whatever, with these sort of original takes, and that are also supposed to be hilarious, and it's just everybody's embarrassing themselves. And then this fireworks scene goes in this whatever the fuck direction where Luke Bracey ends up blowing his finger off, which you can kind of admire for being a pretty drastic thing to happen to one of the main characters in a movie like this. But this just kind of goes on and on and on, and by the time it gets to the end of this, you kind of wonder, why would you have something happen here that takes us on such a detour? Like, what even is the point of this? Oh, it's the point of every single other scene, which is they have to get closer so they can inevitably end up together, because that's the kind of movie that this movie was against all the way up to this point, but whatever. So, we have moments where it seems like it's maybe trying to be original in regards to the fact that it's a modern love story, so there's like a whole conversation between them that takes place like via video chat, and it's shot that way, and it's like, is this, like, are these the attempts to look like there's something new and different in this thing, because nothing else in the movie is doing it. But that's, I don't even know. But then of course there's another case where I've talked about that there's something you'll notice, particularly in the comedies. These comedies that go straight to Netflix, and usually are the romantic comedy type, these movies would not have 75% of their dialogue if they weren't referencing other movies. Like I said, I'm almost positive if you sign up to write a Netflix movie, that's in the contract. That 75% of your dialogue has to come from references to other movies that mean nothing, that say nothing, are just the characters talking, but you don't really want to write anything, so just, hey, let's talk about the things that happen in these movies, or just say their names. Just say their names. because you have nothing else to say, apparently. And what's really funny about this is that there's a Halloween party, and Lou Bracey's friend is dressed as a panther, so he's going around saying he's, a Black Panther, thus apparently the Black Panther. And I guess I had heard that there were actually references to Chadwick Boseman in those conversations, like you see all the other movie references in all these other Netflix comedies. They take one movie reference and go on and on and on and fucking on because they don't want to write their own thing. But for obvious reasons, they had to cut the Chadwick Boseman lines. So they just straight up took one of the only things this movie had. It's like, no, that's our safety net. That helps us not work on this thing and do anything with it. Please let us have our Chadwick Boseman lines back. Give us something. And you can tell I don't know if they re-edited them or like redubbed them or something, but just the conversations are so fucking scattered. And it's like, this is what they do when they don't have that fucking safety net of other things to reference. It's just like, what do we even do? What do we even say? What do we write? We have nothing. We have nothing to contribute to this movie. So, it's not surprising at all that if you take that away from them, they've got nothing. The conversations in these movies have nothing. So, there's that. And we have the age-old thing also where, if all else fails, have a child say something vulgar. That'll get a cheap laugh. So there's the whole thing where they're talking about whores. They're just talking about whores, and the girl says, what's a whore? And of course it's supposed to be funny that the girl said whore. And so I guess it's kind of a funny response to that she basically explains, she basically answers her, doesn't do the dancing around thing you typically see when a child asks something like that in a movie, or in real life for that matter. But then we just kind of get that shot of oh, this is hilarious because the girl has no idea what she's talking about. And it's fucking lazy and cheap, and they even give her a fuck later. They let her say, don't fuck it up or something at the end. And it's like, yeah, that's the height of hilarity. Good job. So, yes, and then of course, ultimately this leads to the age-old scene of a character having to apologize and say, I messed up, and stuff like that. That, every time I fucking hear I messed up towards the end of a movie, I just get this feeling like, if I just hear that one more time, I'm gonna fucking explode. It's all the same goddamn bullshit. And it's honestly, it gets you to a point where, you know how when you hear the same word over and over and over again, it starts to just sound weird, even though it sounds normal in any other context? That's kind of what I kind of had that thing where it's like, when you hear so many protagonists say, I messed up, in an apology, you start to wonder, how many times have we been asked by a movie to root for a character we probably shouldn't be rooting for? There is an alarming amount of protagonists that have had to confess that they fucked up. And it's... and it's like, how many times do we have to see this before it's... And it's because it's always for dumb reasons. You can say, yeah, human beings are always fucking up, sure. But it's always for dumb reasons in movies like this, so... And preventable reasons. Always preventable reasons. So, I don't know. And it's really basically just coming down to her saying, I messed up, and you kind of messed up too, because we were in an entirely different movie in the first half of this. In the first half of this, we were people that hated situations like this, but through character development, or whatever this script thinks is character development, we're the thing that we hate now. That's the thing. It's not like this embracing of, oh, maybe it's okay to be something like this. No, it feels like characters are just becoming what they hate, and a movie itself is becoming what it hates. And neither were working anyway. But I don't know if the cynical aspect would have worked better if it didn't come to this, but I don't know, it's all bullshit. And what really sucks about this especially, is I was getting so goddamn antsy watching this, I completely forgot, not that I would usually encourage watching a movie this way, But, and I feel like it's kind of we're sending viewers and audiences down a bad path by even bringing this into it. But I mean, when movies like this exist, it makes sense, especially with this Netflix, I think, being the first platform to kind of take this on. I'm not positive on that, but that feature where you can speed it up a little bit, and it's where you kind of like what you can do with YouTube videos, where you can set the speed of a certain case. You can slow it down or speed it along, and eventually, if you get used to it, sort of sped up a little bit, it doesn't take as long to watch. And I really wish I had remembered that they had installed that feature before I finished this. So that's like an hour 40 something down the fucking drain, but there's been plenty of hour 40 chunks of time that are down the drain from doing these review videos and shit. So that's pretty much all I have to say about this. I thought I had promise there, but I was naive back then. I was naive at the thought of Emma Roberts saying fucking holidays, being like, oh, this isn't a Hallmark movie, but then it's like, oh, that's what they're trying to tell us for an hour and 40 minutes. It's not a Hallmark movie. Until it's a Hallmark movie. So, yeah. You can put all the fucks in there you want. It's still a goddamn Hallmark movie. And like I said, a worse one for trying to pass itself off as something else. Something better. Something above Hallmark quality. And it's... You pieces of shit. So, you lazy, lazy pieces of shit. So, that's where I think I'm going to leave this. We got a few far episodes left and a few more of these left. And then we'll hopefully get to our caught up pace or whatever. So until the next thing, that's it.